Okay, so the first step in making dandelion jelly is obviously getting the dandelion petals. And you want to make sure when you're picking the dandelions to remove the green bitter part. So I'll show you how to do that. So you just take the head. I usually just take it in my hand like that and pull up. Usually they come right off, but you can use scissors if you want. And then you just, like I said, you want to take the green bitter part out. So you just pick out the petals with your fingernail, or you could, I suppose, cut it off, but this is pretty easy. They come out pretty well. Okay, so typically I would do this in the field, but since we're nearing the end of the season, I decided it might be easier, and it's really hot and muggy outside, so I decided to just pick off the whole head and bring them inside, and my mom's gonna help me peel off these petals. Okay, so like I said, we're just gonna grab as many petals as you can in the middle there and just kind of pull them out. You can also just grab them by the top. Sometimes they come out like that too, but sometimes they don't, so you might have to scoop them out with your fingernail a little bit, and there you go, it's all cleaned up. Okay, so we got all the petals separated, and we boiled the water, so it's about 6 cups of petals. We're doing 2 batches, so it's 6 cups of petals and 10 cups of water, but if you're doing 1 batch, you would do 3 cups of petals and 5 cups of water. So we'll just measure it out here. It's still warm. Let's see, and that's 2 cups exactly. And we'll just pour it in. There's gonna be a lot of water in here, so it's not really that important if you don't get it over all the petals. Doing so well at this. 2, 4. Okay, so I've got all the water in here, and then I'm just gonna give it a stir so that they're all mixed in there. Nice and mixed in. And then just make sure you get all the petals off of the spoon, which is not easy sometimes. And then just leave it here until it cools down. So it usually takes about an hour or 2 to cool down, and then put it in the fridge for 24 hours. Okay, so the dandelions have sat in the fridge and macerated for 24 hours. So now we're at the point where we're gonna strain them out. And so I just put a strainer over a measuring cup thing, just because it fits over that. You don't necessarily have to, and you can measure it out later, but we want, I think it's 5 cups of juice. So that's what we'll do. Another thing that you can do, and what I've seen online, is you can like push it down with a paper towel or something like that, but we have enough juice, so I don't really need to do that. Okay, so I have enough juice for 2 batches, so I'm gonna start with just 1 batch because it doesn't really work to double it. So we start with 4 cups dandelion juice. Add that to the pot, and then a 1/4 cup lemon juice. You want to make sure these measurements are accurate because it won't work otherwise. And then this is about a half cup lavender. That's what we're going to make, is dandelion lavender jelly, but we've also done elderflower liqueur, and we did something else too, but this one is half cup of lavender in what's called an infusion bag or a cheesecloth. So we're just gonna stick that right in there too. Okay, so we're gonna turn this on and we'll get that warming up. We wanna get it to 160, and so we use this all-clad thermometer, and just you can turn it on and stick it in there and it'll read the temperature, so that's pretty handy to have. I think it's definitely, you need some sort of thermometer. And then you'll see in the back there I've got some lids going, and we just use this little magnetic guy and can pick them up with the magnet so we don't have to touch it. Okay, and then so we've got the lids in the back there, and then we've got the water bath going. We're trying to get that up to hot so that will heat up the jars. And then the jars we've got in the oven here, they're at about 250, and so we're just, everything is on while we're heating up the juice and the liquid. Okay, so it's at 160, so we're gonna add 1/3 cup plus 1 tablespoon of pectin, which I already had measured out. So I just sprinkle it in there, and then we'll stir it around. And you want to stir it in there pretty well. Sometimes it gets kind of foamy on the top, and so we have, I'll show you here in a second, we have kind of like an anti-foam thing, but you don't necessarily need that. You can just skim off the foam too. And so we're going to bring this back up to a boil, and then once it gets boiling, put a little bit of that foam stuff. So this is the anti-foam spray. Like I said, we use it because we're commercial grade, but you don't necessarily have to. You can just skim it off. Just put a tiny little bit in there. So we're going to bring it back up to a boil, and then once it's back to boiling, we'll set the timer for 2 minutes. Okay, so now it's at a rolling boil, so I'm going to set the timer for 2 minutes, and we'll kind of keep stirring it around until it gets to the 2 minutes. So after this boils for 2 minutes, I'm going to pour in the sugar, and this is 5.5 cups of sugar, and with jellies you really do have to use that amount of sugar. With jams you can use a little bit lower amounts of sugars, but jellies, in order to get it set, you have to use that. And there goes my timer. Okay, so now I've got my sugar in there, and I'm going to bring it back up to 200 degrees. You want to stir it and make sure all the sugar gets dissolved, but then once it comes back up to 200 degrees, you'll remove it from the heat, and that's when you'll get to fill in the jars. Okay, so it got to 200. I just turned off the heat so that it will be, it'll stay on hot, but it won't be still boiling. And so I'm just going to drain the infusion bag here. I'm just going to pick it up with tongs and kind of squeeze out as much as I can. And then we'll just set that aside. Okay, so I'm just going to pull them out and set them on the cutting board that we've got here. And as you can see, I'm just going to do 2 at a time. And this recipe should fill 6 to 8 jars. Usually we get about 8. Alright, so now we're ready to fill the jars. So this is a funnel that we have, and we just set it right into the jar. And that's actually how I move the jars, because they're still hot, so, and especially hot when I have the liquid. Okay, so you want to fill them so that they have enough room at the top to be able to seal. So it usually goes to about the first or second line there. Okay, so if you don't use the anti-foam stuff, or even if there is some foam left on top, you can just kind of skim it off with a spoon. And just throw it into the sample jar there. Okay, so now we're going to do the lids, and we don't want to touch the inside of the jelly, so we just put them on like that and use this little magnetic guy. Okay, so we put them in the hot water bath for 10 minutes, and now we took them out and we're just letting them cool down and rest, and then once they're cool we'll put the skirts on and give it a taste.